How you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Fantastic. Thanks for doing this, man.
No worries. Sorry for the disorganization. It's been kind of a wild week.
No kidding. And I usually book stuff out like weeks in advance. So me asking you to do it quickly was also out of the norm for me. So I'm glad it came together.
Awesome.
Um, how do you pronounce your name?
I pronounce my real name's Alessandro, and then my last name's Sliber, but people call me Alo.
Sliber.
Yes,
That's the
sir.
part I was confused by or wasn't certain of.
Yeah.
Um, what about Luca? Is it Padua?
Padua. It is Padua, but we call him Luca Padua.
Padua. Okay, cool. I will give you a proper introduction like in post production so you and I can just have a casual conversation.
Okay.
Um, but how's the outlook for tomorrow? What's it looking like?
It's looking, it downgraded a ton.
Hmm.
We're kind of still hoping, but it seems like that swell had moved away from California and it's not going to hit us very hard, which is kind of a blessing and a curse because, a little break would be good, I think, for our bodies.
I was wondering about that. How old are you?
I'm 23 years old.
Okay. So I'm like at 23, maybe you could just go nonstop. For me personally, at 43, I'm like, I always appreciate the break.
Yeah. No, I appreciate I think this is the one time that I think I could appreciate a little break. That being said, I just surfed for 3 hours. So
At Mavericks?
We just surfed just at my home right here at Steamer Lane. We surfed
Cool.
Mavericks yesterday for a while, which was fun, and it was just Luca and I out, which was epic.
Nice.
Yeah,
Um, how do your employers feel about you taking time off work to go surfing?
they're supportive. I
Really?
work. Yeah, I mean, I work for Florence right now, and it's pretty awesome. But they're full support as long I'm getting my job done and doing everything else, then it's good. And we travel up and down the coast, so it's easy, to just stop by a couple surf shops and check in. Uh,
Okay.
but
I
concrete
thought,
work is not. It was only this summer.
oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought that was your full-time gig. Is that officially done or is it just a seasonal thing?
It's funny. My employer is like a really good friend of mine, and named Russell Smith, and he was Maverick surfer, surf ghost trees for a long time, and so he fully gets it. And he was just like, "Hey, just take the winter off and just enjoy." And I was like, "Cool, easy."
Amazing. Yeah, because I was like, God, the surf industry is in a bad spot if you can ride the biggest wave that's ever been ridden and you still have to go clock in for your day job on Monday.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's good. I enjoy it for sure, and this is definitely a big stepping stone, I guess, for a lot of people are telling me. For me, it's just, what I enjoy doing, but
Yeah.
concrete is awesome and it's a good learning experience of how manual labor is it's hard on your body and it's difficult, but I went to UCSC too. I got my 4-year degree in legal studies, and I just wanted to kind of enjoy and chase what I've been dreaming to do since I was a young kid.
Perfect. Let's talk about, we'll get kind of more into your origin story stuff in a little bit, but let's talk about December 23rd. Looked like
Mhm.
you were in Hawaii prior to that. What was that tell me about the swell forecast leading into the 23rd and what was your read on it and what were you up to?
Mhm. So it started in the beginning of December. I was surfing Mavericks. I think we surfed it 2, 3 days in a row, and we were up there and just enjoying it, finally kind of getting some swell. Nothing crazy, nothing out of the ordinary, but just, we love it. So out there every day. And I heard about the opportunity about going to Jaws, and I just had to kind of take it. It was finally like the time to go. And I traveled over there and I met a good buddy of mine, Krister, who took me out and showed me the ropes. And I know a lot of those guys too, between Tori and, a lot of those travelers that come to Mavericks. I've just met a lot of people in passing, and so it was kind of cool to see them and their home turf and learn the wave. But the swells, it was nonstop over there for, 3, 4 days. And that big swell that was going to hit the 22nd there was going to hit Mavericks on the 23rd. And everyone was kind of looking at me like I was crazy for going back home. But we knew that like I was not going to miss that opportunity to surf Mavericks at the biggest that it ever gets. And it was looking iffy on the forecast, like the south wind was it was blowing for days on end, and it really didn't look like it was going to be a rideable day
Mm.
until that morning. But my friend Luca and I always have that feeling where like we're gonna be able to ride it. Like there's just no way that we won't be able to. And luckily it cleaned up enough to let us tow.
Um, let's go back to Jaws. Was that your first trip out there?
Yeah, it was my first time um, out to Jaws. It's pretty incredible surfing big waves in warm water, I'll tell you that.
Well, what do you prepare any differently?
I mean, a little bit, right? You just prepare the same mindset, but I was also, you know, although your mindset is always like, okay, like get a big one, kind of prepare your body, everything, eat well and breathe. I was also going into it just kind of being like, okay, if I get a wave, great. If I don't, I just really want to go check out the area. And
Yeah.
it's a dream of mine since I was a kid, just watching it online. So I had zero pressure. I don't have a ton of sponsors, and it's just kind of like they were the one sponsor that I do have is West Peak, and they were just like, yeah, go do it, go check it out. Like nothing out of the ordinary. So it was kind of freeing in a way, just being able to go out there and just see it, just visualize it.
Um, did you were paddling, right?
Yeah, I only paddled.
Okay. And it looked like you got a couple, right?
Yeah, I got a couple waves. I was really happy. The first day I got off the plane, landed there probably around 11, and pretty much drove straight to the launch ramp, got picked up, and we went out there, and there was only 8 or 9 guys out, and it was rolling. So it was kind of cool to like be out there when nobody really out. I mean, in big wave standards, that's nobody out, which is
Yeah.
crazy. But it was cool to figure out my own lineups and asking people and introducing myself and just a newcomer to a wave. It's kind of refreshing.
Why was it so uncrowded?
I don't know. I really don't know. It was clean. It was rolling. There's days like that even at Mavericks, like just yesterday, just Luca and I were out in the bowl by ourselves for 3 hours, and we were just trading off on waves, no jet skis, nothing.
Hmm.
It's pretty incredible. And you kind of live for those days, honestly, but
Yeah.
you also live for those giant days.
Um, how is Jaws different than your experience at Mavericks?
Jaws is completely different in the sense that the bowl comes at you from the west, right? If you're sitting on that inside bowl, it's coming at you from the channel. And that's kind of a weird, coming from Mavericks, you see it pop up and you can get away. You obviously get caught inside quite a bit out at Mavericks too, but Jaws, it felt like you were literally paddling up the face of where you're supposed to take off, no matter where you were getting caught
Hmm.
inside. So, and then another thing I noticed is with Mavericks, when you're in the bowl, sometimes you're just too deep and you'll get swallowed. At Jaws, it seemed like the first couple waves I thought I was really deep, and I ended up being on the shoulder because of how hard it bends at you. So I had to kind of adapt to that. You're just like, all right, I got to be way deeper than I think I am, and hopefully, this game plan goes through. But
Yeah.
yeah, Mavericks is completely different, and just the aspects. One is Mavericks is a slab, Jaws is a big, it's a perfect wave.
Does one feel scarier?
They're all scary. They're all scary.
From where I'm sitting here in my leather chair watching it on the internet, Jaws looks scarier. I'm sorry, not Jaws. Mavericks looks scarier. Jaws looks more perfect and predictable. The warmth, I think,
Yeah.
feels somewhat inviting. And
Yeah.
then Mavericks, on the other hand, just looks treacherous, you know?
Yeah. Mavericks, I just have been hearing it from so many people that the beat down is different because it goes into a deep trough right after it hits the bowl. And so you can get driven down pretty far compared to Jaws. I don't know. I really don't know. I didn't get that annihilated out of Jaws, but I've definitely had my fair share of beatings out at Mavericks, and I'll tell you that it's never fun.
Right. Um, the images that I saw of you getting tubed at Jaws, did you make that one?
I did not. I
Okay.
was too deep on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Yeah. Great shots, though.
Yeah, crazy.
Um, so you were in Hawaii up until the 22nd?
Yep. Or I flew back. I gave myself a full day of the 22nd at home.
Okay.
I took the red eye over late night on the 21st and got in the 22nd and made it back in the morning, and it was just like I want to have a full day to just prep and go over our game plan and make sure our jet skis and tow boards and everything were, locked and loaded.
Gotcha. What do you eat on the 22nd for dinner? What time do you go to sleep?
That's a funny one, right? Because you really want to go to bed at like 8, but with nerves and prep, you never really do.
Yeah.
But I do remember we ate a lot of ground beef and avocados and kind of everything, honestly. Carbs. We just wanted to fuel up as much as we could because we knew we weren't going to be eating out there.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a compound of a lot of protein, a lot of fats, and normally a lot of sleep. But that night in particular was very difficult to fall asleep.
How much sleep did you get that night?
Probably 6 hours on and off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what time do you wake up?
I woke up probably around 4:30 and started dilly-dallying around the house and drinking coffee, checking the buoys every 3 seconds. And it's just it's kind of a weird feeling because we stay up at my friend's house up there in Half Moon Bay, Luca's house, and he's probably 2 minutes from the launch ramp. But it's out there and it's still dark out, and you just want to get out there as fast as you can. But we actually didn't go out first light that morning. We wanted to wait. We saw that the swell just wasn't there yet,
Oh,
and a lot of people kind of rushed out and they were towing pretty early on, and it didn't look big. And so we rolled out probably around 8:30. But the minute we rolled out at 8:30 or 9, then you started seeing some sets, and we just went from there and grabbed the rope and started towing, and we didn't stop till 4:30.
wow, that's crazy. So
Yeah.
did you eat breakfast that morning?
We had a lot of coffee with a lot of fats in it, but no real meal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you bring anything out with you? Granola bars or anything like that?
Yeah, we take Go macro bars out there, and
Yeah.
it was kind of funny because we didn't really time ourselves very well. We were trying to eat bars while we were waiting out the back for sets, but there was just nonstop waves. In fact, I visually remember having a bar in my mouth while I was driving Luca into a wave and watching him spit his out because he was like, there was just a wave coming. And it was just, game on. That's the priority all the time. But
Yeah.
we could have been better at, drinking water, more water, and eating more because by the end of the day, I was cramping, like exhausted. We didn't stop for more than 5 minutes. Like,
That's crazy.
yeah, Luca, I think, must have caught 30 waves. It was
Yeah, that's
crazy.
insane. What about, do you bring bananas?
We don't we don't
Okay,
bring bananas. We probably should, but we just normally just try and pound electrolytes, and that
gotcha.
normally keeps us steady enough to just go throughout the day.
Okay.
That day in particular, though, was just nonstop.
Yeah, that's unusual. How does the lineup work? Do you take turns with other tow teams, and is there a pecking order?
Yeah, so we've been kind of talking about this a lot out at Mavericks because toe surfing is relatively back in fashion at Mavericks. And unless it's Pete Mel or John Mel or Ryan Augustine or Jojo Roper, we're probably all gonna go on those waves because it gets a little bit of a like we've been putting in the time waiting for this swell and yeah, it's just interesting because a lot of people kind of want to come and tow and learn how to tow surf out there, but we're not doing it in any aggravating, fashion, but we're just letting them know, hey, like this is not the place to learn. And some people just don't get that. And I think a lot of other places in the world are kind of being affected by that too. And they can speak on that as well. But regardless of that, and that was a little bit of a rant, we that day, there was only probably 3 or 4 jet skis in the water. And so we were the tow teams that were there, we just rotated and it was like pretty much one person would go, grab the rope, go right back out and just keep going.
Yeah, when it's that consistent, everybody's getting plenty of waves. It's not really an issue, I suppose.
Exactly. Like that day in particular was just like by the time you're going back out, somebody's getting another wave and it's just
Yeah.
like you barely even saw each other out there.
Right. So tell me about the wave. Um, how long were you out before you caught that one? And how did it approach? Did you know that it was going to be the biggest of everything that you had seen that day? Kind of walk me through the experience.
Yeah, so that wave in particular, I think somebody had clocked it in around 3 o'clock. I didn't know what time it was even.
Okay.
Um, but we had been seeing waves break 200, 300, 400 yards outside of us at this point. Yeah, it's crazy. Like some of the video footage, we were just reviewing it last night with our one of our filmers, and he was showing us like waves that were breaking so far out into just nothing. And
And were they bigger?
they weren't necessarily bigger. Yeah, they were in a sense. The swell was probably bigger, but it wasn't hitting the reef well,
Got
so
it.
it didn't stand up. It just was kind of just a big whitewater. But in particular, I remember that set, we looked over at the green can, which is one of these buoy markers for the boats, and there was waves cresting, like not quite breaking, but like feathering right onto the can, and that's hundreds of feet deep. So we knew this set was going to be giant, and when we saw the wave come in and how it was bending, we know exactly which ones we want. There's this certain look to them. They just kind of bend towards the reef. And we just knew right away. It was like Luca was like, all right, we're going. Like
Hmm.
there's no question about it. And I didn't disagree with him.
And you happen to be up in rotation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was any jet skis out the back at that point. Um, like I was even saying earlier, like there was periods of time where Luca and I were surfing out there for an hour, hour and a half by ourselves
Gotcha.
going, and people were taking breaks, which was probably smart, but we just knew it was the swell of the century, so we were just like, we got to capitalize on everything that we can do right now.
Totally. So tell me about that wave itself. As you get towed into it, can you walk me through the experience?
Yeah, we didn't do much of a whip. It was kind of a And when I mean whip, it was you normally use the jet ski and you kind of turn off the wave and the toe surfer actually uses the tension at his discretion and then lets go of the rope. But we didn't have to track the wave very far at all. It was standing up quite a bit, and it was a quick little whip. And once I let go of the rope, I knew it was going to be probably one of the biggest waves of my life. Um, there was just so much speed on the surfboard. I've never really felt it like this, is that there was so much water coming back up the face as it was sucking up, and the board was going so fast, it almost felt like trying to drag something like sandpaper over concrete. You were feeling almost like you were going back up the wave, but really your momentum's still moving forward.
Hmm.
And that initial line that I took was go straight down it and then maybe bottom turn, and I wasn't really sure what the wave was going to do. But the minute I felt that, I decided to bottom turn because I was, you kind of had a sense. You're like, okay, this wave's going to bowl out pretty hard right on the bowl. And once I put the board on rail and made my descent and across, it was pretty much just as clean as it can be. For that day, it was a bumpy, rugged day still. So having that wave be that clean in particular was definitely a blessing.
Yeah, it seemed like there were a couple little bumps, but they came kind of after the meatiest part of the wave.
Yep.
So it looked like you wrote, I mean, to be honest, it looked like you wrote it perfectly. Um, you know, things could have gone wrong under if a different surfer was on it, but it feels like you did everything perfectly. It was incredible.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
What were you riding?
I was on a 510 stretch toe board. I've been working with him since I was, you know, 13 years old, even younger. I remember being in there when I was a baby and my dad ordering boards and, painting all over my dad's new boards and him getting pissed. But he's been a really good friend of mine for a while, and he's always made my toe boards, and that toe board just felt incredible that day. Just the weight felt right, everything felt good.
I know he works with a lot of EPS. Are his
Mhm.
toe boards EPS as well?
So his toe boards are actually PVC foam. And so they are super dense, hard to work with, but initially I didn't think those would work, but he was saying that they are indestructible. Like you can chop the nose off of it and keep surfing it and it would be fine. And you could pretty much run it over with your car as long as your fin boxes aren't destroyed, right? But
Wow.
so they're very durable surfboards, and they have a really different flex pattern compared to the normal EPS or polyfoam. So we kind of let the mastermind go to work, and we'll just ride them.
Did you say PVC?
Yep.
Like the PVC plastic that they make pipes out of?
Yeah, it doesn't look like that when the it's a different type of, foam, but when the blank comes in, it's probably this thin, maybe, half an inch to a quarter inch thick, and then he gets two of them and he actually compresses the two together. And then from there, he shapes it. And, he's talked about it with us many times before. He's like, it's a whole day of shaping because the foam is so dense and so hard to work with. But he's, proven himself time and time before that they work.
Yeah. So is it very rigid?
It's it's interesting. It's a little more rigid, but it still has that flex that a poly would. The main thing for him is just like it's an expensive surfboard, right? So he just wanted them to be as indestructible as possible. And if you do lose them into the rocks, which is, almost every other session out there, if you do fall, you'll be able to fix it quickly and still be able to ride it.
And does he laminate them the same that he would a PU or a
Mhm.
EPS?
Yes, he does. It's all the same. The outer shell is all the same as the
Okay.
normal board, just the actual core of it is a little different.
Fascinating. And do you know how much it weighs? That 510 in particular?
I think my 5'10" is around 16, 17 pounds.
That's insane.
Yeah. But we actually, so the boards themselves are fairly light, but Stretch has came up with a theory that he actually puts a bracket that you bolt a 5 pound sort of dive weight onto them,
Yeah.
and you can shift the weight up and back the board depending on the day. So the farther back it is on the board, the more, you're going to be able to maneuver and S-turn your way through. And the farther forward it is, the faster that surfboard's going to go.
So is it on like a little slide system where you just move the weight up and down the deck of the board?
Yeah, in a sense, it's a weight, and the square in the middle has a hole in it. And then you put bolts with washers on it and pretty much just clamp that weight down onto the board. And it's super easy to take off and maneuver and everything. And sometimes we just do it with no weight, depending on the day, right? If it's smaller. But that day, you definitely wanted a weight.
And so where'd you positioned it all the way back on that day?
I put it just right down in the middle.
Okay.
I just wanted to be the most comfortable that I could and
Yeah.
have any nuances that I didn't know of.
Fascinating. I have not seen this. I mean, I've seen guys put weights in toe boards before, like embedding them in PU foam and that sort of thing, but I've not seen the thing where you move it.
Yeah, it's
Is
super.
is that just a stretch thing or is anybody else doing that?
It's the only guy that I know that has done that, and maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Okay.
that's the only surfboard maker that I know of that does that.
Fascinating. What's the fin setup that you were riding that day?
I was riding 4.0 big wave future quads.
Quad. Okay. Is quad kind of the go-to with the toe boards?
Yeah, so people have been kind of playing around with that, and certain people think thrusters the way to go now, and certain people still think quad. I I just only have ridden quads. And I think that's just the fastest way to go on a surfboard. And then I think those people would agree, even if they're riding thrusters. But thrusters do tend to be a little more maneuverable and stable because of that middle fin. But I just love the feeling of a quad, and I just really want to go fast.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Um, when you kick out of that wave, do you instantly have a sense that it was an important wave?
It's funny because I've been asked that a lot, and that day in particular, it felt like every wave that you kicked out of was kind of like the biggest wave of your life. But to answer your question, it was the biggest wave of my life, that one wave in particular. But it's funny, like you remember your friends' rides more than you remember yours, I feel like on days like that. And it's all becoming a little bit of a blur, but I know in the moment I definitely knew it was the biggest wave of my life.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a polite and very humble thing to say. I remember my friends' rides better than my own, but I think there's also the thing where the what we're seeing in the photographs of that wave is kind of the girthiness of how it was doubling up. But for you, the rider, that was behind you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like unless you're in the pocket, you're not really fully appreciating that element of the ride. Whereas you being a friend and watching somebody else, you're seeing all of those details of the wave. And so you can appreciate some of that. And so for you riding the wave, we don't know, like, can you appreciate it in the moment when you're riding it, or does it then set in after the fact? Because with a wave size, it's not, of course, just the height itself, it's that thickness and what that wave kind of the meatiness of it that gets factored into it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you're completely correct. I mean, when we ride our jet skis on those ridge lines and you're towing your friend in and you're looking down, that's super memorable because you get to see the sheer size of that wave. Rather, when you're on that wave, and we did pull into a few barrels that day, and that was, those are memorable for a fact. And because you visually get to see that wave engulf you. But yeah, that wave in particular, I just noticed the speed, right? Like going that fast on a surfboard is pretty remarkable.
So that I guess is the detail is
Yeah.
the girthiness you can feel in terms
Yeah,
of speed, even if you can't fully see it.
exactly.
Um, do you remember what was your impression when you first saw the imagery of the wave?
I actually thought it was photoshopped.
I did too.
Yeah, I texted a few people and I'm like, is this photoshopped? And they're like, no. And I'm like, all right, I like it.
Yeah, I mean you're a spec.
Yeah. It was it's pretty interesting, right? Have how much it's blown up, and I'm not used to that type of stuff. I'm just kind of here to ride waves and enjoy what I love doing. But the imagery from that day, like everyone's wave looked photoshopped, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it was crazy.
Well, for me, sitting in Southern California, like it was overwhelming because you got all this footage of Jaws, Waimea, Mavericks. It was just too much to fully process. Any one of those rides would have been the ride of the year in any other year, and it was just pouring in, you know? So it's hard to appreciate, but yours stands alone. Despite saying that, yours stands alone at the end of it all.
Yeah.
So
Which is pretty cool.
crazy.
Yeah.
Did you celebrate that night?
No, we went right to bed and woke up first thing in the morning and went right back out.
Good.
Yeah.
Good for you. Um, has it grown your social media or what are the numbers? How much has it grown your social media?
Think I got around 10,000 followers, but it was kind of crazy. Also, I was looking, I had a buddy of mine show me how to do, like, you make it a business account and you can see all the views, right? And I've had over 1 million people see some of my stuff, which is kind of crazy. And the phone has been off the hook. And yeah, I get why people have managers now.
Have you had any business opportunities present themselves?
Not yet. No, no business opportunities. Nothing of the such. I just,
Has it gone viral beyond the surf world? Have you started to get inquiries from mainstream media?
yeah, so I'm half Italian and I speak Italian fluently. And I grew up, did part of kindergarten over there, and my mother's from there. So I was actually on their main network over there, the news network, and did like a live interview. And now it's just like all of Europe has been texting me nonstop trying to get an interview. And it's overwhelming for sure. But I would say that's outside of like the surf world for sure. And people hit me up. I was on Fox Sports 1 this morning. There was just, yeah, crazy, crazy stuff that I would have never imagined would ever happen from just, not to just say it was just a wave, but, for us, it was a wave.
Totally. Yeah. Um, I'm curious, how do the rescue teams work out there? Obviously, you and Luca are responsible for one another, but are there other rescue specific skis?
hmm Yeah, so we have a buddy of ours who runs rescue. His name's Drake Stanley, and he kind of overwatches all of us. He was towing in a few people that day as well, but him and Frank Chiardi definitely came to come get us a couple times. And, if I miss him, then they're right on the next wave trying to get Luca. So it's cool. We have a solid team and process, and normally we do have a spotter up on the cliff as well. But that day the sea breeze was so high you couldn't. It looked like a dense fog out in the lineup, and so those people watching could hardly see anything.
Got
Uh,
it.
but yeah, those are like the two main guys, and then the rest you're kind of on your own, right? So it's you and nature in a
Are, is there a collective fund that you guys contribute to compensate those guys for that work?
Yeah, they have a GoFundMe that they normally do every year, and I really encourage people to, donate, especially if you're a surfer out there, and because it's just kind of crazy how many people go out there without water rescue or even acknowledge or pay these guys after they get picked up, and they're the real heroes. And so yeah, we would want to have more water rescue, but it's just not, it's so they have to do it for the love of actually being out there, and there's not a lot of people like that. And surfers are selfish, and I know that so for a fact.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like those guys are going to be doing it no matter what, but they're risking their lives. And so it would be good to compensate them for it.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, it's just good across the board. Let's back up a little bit. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Santa Cruz?
Yeah, I grew up in Santa Cruz, lived here my whole life, went to Santa Cruz High, and just haven't stopped surfing since pretty much the age of 3.
Did your parents surf?
My dad's a surfer, yeah. So he was the one who taught me, and it just kind of, what's funny is like I did not like the ocean from probably the age of 9 to 12. It was just no interest to me. I was like, it's cold, it's dark, like I don't know why we do this. But what really brought me back into it, besides my dad, also just, you know, and I'm grateful for that, but is the junior lifeguard program that we have here. I did it since I was a young kid and went all the way up to being a lifeguard, and it just made me really appreciate the ocean. And they would take you out in those big days in the shore pound, and you kind of just learn to love it. And from there, it kind of just took off.
Very good. Just out of curiosity, where in Italy is your mom from?
My mom is from a small town in the northwest of Italy called Ivrea.
Okay.
It's an hour and a half from Milan, kind of up into the Alps. And so grew up snowboarding over there, and it was awesome. It was definitely a treat.
What, how'd she end up in Santa Cruz?
She actually ended up meeting my dad. She went to Berkeley for college,
Okay.
and my dad was living in the city. He grew up in Santa Cruz and moved to San Francisco for work, and they just kind of linked up from there, and then she just never left.
Cool. Very cool. Um, how did you develop your interest kind of coming out of that lifeguard story? How did you develop your interest in big wave surfing?
So it's kind of my going back to my mom, Zach Wormout, a good friend of ours, would always give us the Power Lines movies and all these crazy videos. And I would just grew up watching those just nonstop. And I think she, in fact, hid them from me for a while because I could never find them. But grew up watching all my local heroes kind of doing it out there. And one day a good friend of ours, Pat Shaughnessy, who's like a mentor to me, just took me out to Middle Peak here outside Steamer Lanes, kind of a bigger wave, and you kind of move your way up the coast and surf all these bigger waves until I remember the first day I paddled out, I was 14 out at Mavericks, and he just picked me up, loaded my cruiser bike in the back of the car, and he's like, I have all your gear, we're going. And you know, I got to thank him a ton because he was what really made it all possible.
Did your parents know that that's where you guys were going?
I'd like to think they did. I don't think so. I think my dad did, but my mom definitely did not.
Yeah, that's sketchy. 14 is young. How big was it?
It was rolling. I remember going down the trail and Garrett McNamara was walking the other way, and him and Pat were talking. Garrett's like, "Oh, it's only like 15 feet on the sets," and I was like, "Oh, okay." As a young kid, you're like 15 feet. That's like Middle Peak down at Steamer Lane. And I remember getting out there and just getting mowed by a few sets, like right off the bat. And I kept just laughing and looking at Pat and being like, this is not 15 feet at all. But didn't catch a wave that day, caught a wave the next time I went out. And, you get kind of beat, but it kind of sees your body shows you if you liked it or not in a sense, right? Like, oh, I survived it, like I'm okay. Or you do the opposite where you're like, I survived this, like let's get out of here.
Totally.
But yeah, from then on, I just was mesmerized by it and still am.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be, even if it was 15 feet, it's got to be a very different 15 feet, right? Than Middle Peak.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
The Mavericks is just so much water coming off the reef, and it's just such a slab compared to any other wave in the world that I've been at, that it has this unique bowl, and that bowl is a scary place to be if you're in the wrong spot.
yeah, totally. Um, that was only, it's weird to think that was only less than 10 years ago, 9 years ago, I guess, from your first wave until now. Um, what is your fitness regime look like? And do you actively train, from that age of 14 and that becomes kind of where you're setting your sights on? Do you actively develop a training regimen for
Mhm.
Mavericks?
Yeah, so along with just high circuits or high heart rate circuit workouts and just being in the ocean as much as I can, I also have been paddling since the age of 11. And
Okay.
my dad and a group of his friends started a paddling group called Ghost Riders Watermen's Club. And we do long distance paddles, from Davenport to Santa Cruz. That's just up Highway 1 here. And it's like 14, 15 miles. And I just kind of grew up doing that and just paddling nonstop. And in fact, when I was 14, this is just before I surfed Mavericks, I actually paddled the Monterey Bay, which is 27 miles. And that was kind of the main way of working out. Now it's different, right? I still paddle a ton and it's awesome. And that's a great, great workout for big wave surfing, just being able to paddle long distance for that amount of time. But now it kind of consists of, from weightlifting to, runs and sprints and breath hold training. Yeah, you just kind of develop everything and you just take all the information that you can get and just apply it to your training, and it just keeps getting better and better and better as years go on.
What about diet? Is there anything that you avoid or are you on a regimen?
I try to avoid, it's hard during the holidays, but sweets or anything like that. I'm not a huge, like, never been a soda kid, never been anything like that, but I try to just eat clean, meat and a ton of meat, a ton of chicken, ton of avocado, just fats and protein are just my number one goal for sure.
Got it. Um, in that development, did you ever do contest circuits? Like, were you, when you weren't riding big waves, were you riding pointy thrusters and being competitive and trying to get sponsors?
A little bit, but not a whole ton, right? Like I would do my middle school contests and the high school contests and maybe an NSSA here and there, but I just never really loved that aspect. And the only thing that I really liked doing that was in competition was the board riders clubs, because it is such a team sport. And no matter if you get a 4 or a 2 or a 10, everyone's just fired up for you. So to answer your question, no, never really wanted to do the circuit or anything like that. It was just more of I was so dead set on trying to ride big waves and so fired up just to surf Mavericks that that stuff never really got me that excited.
Gotcha. Um, what did you say you got your degree in? Your college degree?
Legal studies.
Legal studies. Do you plan to use that? Or what's your career objective there?
Yeah, I do. I'm still planning on getting my master's in business and kind of circling that away from legal, but the original plan was to go to law school and hunker down, get a job, and just do what I love because I love it. And I still just want to do what I love because I enjoy doing it. But now it just seems like it's kind of engulfed my life so much that I just don't know what the future is going to hold. And I still do want to go get my MBA, and I'll probably end up doing that here in the near future, just because I do want to have a backup plan. And there's nothing, there's nothing after, your highs of surfing or your action sports. And so I just want to set myself up to where when I do get done, I'm not completely restarting. And for now, I'm just enjoying it and trying to ride as big waves as possible.
I mean, great, fantastic. It just feels like whether your surf career lasts one winter or five winters,
Yeah.
like there's never been a better jumping off point than the moment that you're at right now. I guess winning a pipe masters or something might be an equivalent, but you're in a moment where there's a real jumping off point. So what do you see the next at least winter look like? Do you have travel planned? Do you start reaching out to management to try to help get them to facilitate some of it for you? What's the
Yeah,
what's the plan? Or do you start a YouTube channel? I mean,
I don't know what I'm gonna do, to be quite frank, because I'm so new to this stuff and I just wasn't used to it. But my plan would be, try and reach out to certain brands and that want to align and just keep chasing the dream. And towing with my friend Luca has been awesome, and I just want to keep doing that. And hopefully we can get into some contests such as the Nazare contest or yeah, whatever. I mean, there's not a lot in the big wave, you know, community for contests at all, but it would just be a dream to be able to travel the world and go seed new big waves. But the reality is without sponsors, I'm not going to be able to do that at the
yeah.
at the high level. But my main focus and always will be is Mavericks. And I just want to keep pursuing that wave as much as I can.
I mean, I'll from my perspective, somebody who follows surfing and just as a fan and a viewer of content, I think there's value in you kind of unpacking that. Like you and Luca are a dynamic duo, and your chasing of Mavericks and pursuit of it give people a peek into the eye, into the behind the scenes stuff of that, I think would have value. And I don't know what the format would be if it needs to be, YouTube or whatever, but the more detailed you can get, I think people would fully eat it up, and especially coming off the high that you guys are coming off of.
Yeah. No, we'll have to game plan something and really lock in and figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah, the demand or the interest is there for sure. So I would consider exploiting it if you could.
Yeah.
What is your, or how did your relationship with Florence develop?
So I just work for them as a sales rep, but I found them through Pat O'Connell, and a good friend of mine is named Alistair Kraft, and he set me up with him. And it was pretty cool. I just, working concrete, and our friend was like, let me get you in touch with Pat because I want you to stop breaking your back. But Pat's been awesome. He's been super supportive of surfing and everything. And he just, yeah, we've grown, I think I would say pretty close. And he's been a great boss, and it's been fun to work for them for the short period of time that I have been.
So are you responsible for retail accounts then?
Yeah, I'm
And
responsible from San Luis Obispo north to Oregon.
cool. Um, they have to be psyched on your commitment to surfing and big wave surfing, especially that kind of gives you wearing multiple hats now at this point, putting a sticker on the board and the sales rep thing.
Yeah, that I think they were all pretty fired up, and even Pat asked me if it was photoshopped because he didn't believe me at first. But yeah, they're super supportive. I mean, every time I'm like, "Hey, I'm going out to Mavericks," not going to be
Yeah.
on the emails today. And obviously, he's still your boss, right? You still got to make some money, but there's 100% in for me just going out there and doing what I love.
It's the best case scenario for them. You're like the ultimate sales rep. Street cred.
Trying.
Do you have any other travel planned for the winter?
We're looking at again, Maui and everything, but the oceans have kind of gone still for a second. So we're kind of waiting to see what that really does, and whatever we see value in, we'll definitely strike on it and try and get over there.
Cool.
But for now, I think a little break is in order.
Gotcha. No interest in the North Shore?
North Shore interests me for sure. I'd love to get over there, and it seems amazing. But for now, I just need to kind of regroup and kind of take in all that's going on through like media and everybody just calling me nonstop, that I think I need to kind of settle down and think about things and then move on from there.
Gotcha. Do you want to mention any, you already have a little bit, but photographers or anybody else on the team who makes these Maverick sessions possible and safe?
Yeah, 100%. Kurt Myers and Eric Nelson at Powerlines have been awesome to me since I was a kid, and they've been out there documenting it forever. And they're the real old school photogs of that spot. And they've seen so many different faces of that wave, and they've always helped me out, always talked to me. They've always been really nice, and I love them for it. And yeah, they're definitely the ones I'd like to shout out. And then also Luca's brother, Dom Padua, who is an amazing photographer, videographer, kind of all the above. And he's been out there on the jet ski with us and flying the drone, doing everything. And he makes a lot of the things that we do possible 100%.
Nice. Okay, cool. Does he surf too?
Yeah, he surfed. We surfed a local beach break up there not that long ago, and it's fun to just all be out in the water too, just not being always in the moment and just playing around and having fun and drinking coffee and talking shit.
Yeah, totally. Couple of questions that I just kind of ask everybody. Is can you identify the best surfing that you've ever seen?
Best surfing I've ever seen. I would have to say it's probably came out from Nat Young, the local here. Nat is a ripping surfer, and when the waves get big, his backside is crazy. It's either him or Cole Houshman for sure. Cole comes up here. He's been coming up here quite a bit in the last, we know when he was younger, and I always thought he was a ripping surfer, and Nat as well. They have very similar styles, and
Yeah,
it's funny talking about it from somebody that's not a goofy foot, but I think those two guys, to me, have been visually the best surfers I've ever seen.
interesting. Yeah, great call. Yeah, Nat, I haven't seen a lot of in the last year or two, but he's a hammer.
Yeah, they call him the Cobra for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. I know he's got a kid now, but what's he up to? Is he competing at all or focused on professional surfing?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm good friends with him, and we hang out all the time. And he's classy. He actually has, I believe, another kid on the way, but
Oh,
he's still very driven and surfs every day and wants to improve himself at all times. So I admire that for sure.
cool. What surf media do you follow?
Surf media,
Or is it all just Instagram at this point?
probably just Instagram at this point, honestly. I try like in recent right now, I'm trying not to look at anything. Just because one, there's just thousands and thousands of people either arguing about the wave height, which I think is really funny, and I'm like, to me, it's hilarious just thinking that it doesn't really matter how big the wave was. I really don't care, and I think they think that I really care, and so surf media, I've been trying not to look at, honestly.
Fair enough. You don't subscribe to any magazines, print mags, Surfer's Journal, anything like that?
No, I haven't in a long time. I think we used to have a surfer journal and surfer and surfing when I was a kid, but I think now I don't believe we have any more subscriptions to that.
Yeah. Um, in regard to wave height, Do you have a number that you would place on your wave? I know you kind of said you don't care, but is there a number?
I'll let the people decide that, and it's kind of interesting, right? Because, and I've talked to a lot of my friends and also just interviews with this, but I think the wave height portion is a little bit of a one sensitive subject, two funny subject to me because for me, I really don't care because it was the biggest wave of my life. And on top of that, I want to pay tribute to those who maybe caught 120 foot, 130-foot waves back in the day and they never got it on camera.
Totally.
So having like the biggest wave ever ridden, it always is like a little bit of a funny thing. Just, you talk to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember back in the day we towed into a wave that was 100 feet and there was nobody around." And some of them you believe, some of them you don't. Like somebody like Laird Hamilton, I 100% believe, but they never had any videographers or anything out there. So it's kind of, I'll let the people decide what size the wave was, but all that really matters to me was the biggest wave of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we could add the caveat of the biggest wave ever ridden that's been documented. If you
Yeah.
add that's been documented, that can make it a little more objective. But I I agree with you. Like I stopped kind of caring about the height a few years ago because the height is only one factor.
Yeah.
Like 100 foot wave at Mavericks is not the same as 100 foot wave at Jaws is not the same as Dungeons or Waimea or whatever else. And so, and then it's constantly undulating and changing at different portions of the wave. So it's like if you were able to measure amplitude or the amount of energy that the wave was creating or something like that, it would be a much more meaningful score that you could assess to a given wave. But just putting a number on the height itself is kind of undermining the entirety of it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's a volume thing rather than just a height thing.
Totally. Yeah. But it makes for a good headline if ESPN can print a, a number.
For sure. Yeah. And that number, whether people agree with it or not, it's definitely blown up out of proportion and or in proportion. I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. Um, Final question for everybody is just what was the last surfboard that you rode?
Last surfboard that I rode was a 511 stretch custom board, short board that I just rode out at Steamer Lane about 20 minutes ago, or however long this podcast has been going.
Right. Yeah. So do you get all your boards from Stretch?
At the moment, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
All my boards.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a gem. I love him and I feel like his career like I haven't heard a lot about him in recent years. Other brands seem to come into fashion or whatever, but anybody who's ever ridden a Stretch or worked with Stretch loves him and raves about the boards.
Yeah, he's a great dude and an amazing shaper and couldn't ask for somebody better.
How do you know how old he is now? He's got to be in his early 60s maybe.
He's definitely in his 60s, yeah, but looking better than ever.
I know, still plugging away too, like at the top of his game.
And very like wants to be in it as well, like calling us immediately after the swell, telling us what we can fix on the next tow boards. And it was just at the nonstop like interest in getting better.
And totally dialed in on what's happening in the world in surfing. Like I'll notice he's sponsored some kid in Ecuador who's doing big air reverses or something like that. And I'm like, dude, how do you pay attention to everything, all big wave surfing and airs and everything? But he's just dialed in.
Yeah, very.
So good. It's a good partnership. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, thank him.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, congratulations again. It's been great to see. I love this era where there's young guys taking it super seriously in all aspects like fitness and diet and all that sort of thing, and then just being on it for season after season to put yourself in this position. So you earned it.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, of course. Glad to. I'll probably publish it later this week, just FYI.
Sweet. Sounds good.
All right, man. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you.
All right. See ya.